I had like a period in my life where I was like getting eyelashes in my eyes a lot, or other like gunk. And it just seemed to be like constant. I was always like running to like a bathroom at a restaurant. And then there was just one time where I had something in my eye. I couldn't find it for a few days, and like I could feel it. And it was like really, really aggravating. Yeah. And I just like ended up getting like pre-primal, like fishing it out. It was just like this whole kind of like adrenaline and disgust and all this stuff, and it's so memorable and disgusting as I was like pulling it out. And so I started like drawing a bunch of like doodles while I was at work or whatever, eyeballs with bugs coming out of them, stuff like that. And then I was like, how can I put this imagery into like a story? And that's kind of how I work. I'll have like a couple images that I think are really strong, and then I sort of work backwards to figure out how they can exist.
Hey, Alec Miller, founder of Royals and Rogues, and today I'm talking to Peter Ahern about his short film, Buzzkill. If you haven't seen the film, pause this video, go to the description, and watch it. You won't regret it. Now that you've seen this short film, this interview is going to be perfect for you if you're just curious about the process, but especially if you are a short filmmaker or interested in making your own short film. We go over the whole journey from the inspiration of his film to getting it written and storyboarded out to hiring actors and animating all the way through the festival circuit and eventually landing on Alter and gaining 500,000 views. I was really encouraged by this interview because we tend to think things should happen a lot faster than they really do. We see people making awesome renders online seemingly daily, and it can be really intimidating if you're trying to create something yourself and it's been taking months, or in my case, years. Hearing it takes other people just as long is very encouraging to me. It helps me push through to continue getting work done on my own projects, and I'm hoping this will inspire you as well. That's my whole goal with this channel, is to create a space where we can start encouraging independent filmmakers to create a filmmaking underground, where independent artists are making short form content outside of Hollywood. I'm hoping long-term we can come up with a profitable format that other artists can follow. But for now, I just want to encourage artists to make their short films, create what they've always wanted to create, and hopefully be an example of that. So with all that out of the way, I hope you enjoy this interview with Peter Ahern. Yeah, there's a few specifics I do want to ask about, but in general, like there's always this battle I feel as creative people and as like artists, right? Like, you know, the big old asterisk on it, but we all believe deep down that like the work should just stand on its own, right? Like we all just believe, and then in reality, everything's sort of a narrative, right? Everything's sort of like, well, you got to build up this kayfabe is a great term that I've come across recently. So like you had to build up this whole kayfabe around it, right? Which is in pro wrestling, it's like the thing that they're making you believe is real, but it's really...
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that was a word.
Yeah, it's called kayfabe. And so it's this idea of like, yeah, we all kind of know there's this game behind it, but like it's no fun just to have the wrestlers show up and wrestle without the like beef and without the like, and even like MMA and stuff like that, there's a bunch of kayfabe there too. There's a bunch of like, oh, you said what to me? And that's what squaring off is. That's like why they do it, is like for the drama. So it's like that other stuff is all the stuff we hate. There's always a balance. I don't know if it sounds like you haven't found a balance, but I'm kind of,
there's a balance
for sure. Balance is between like self-promotion and making a thumbnail that's clickable and will get attention, but also not selling out. There's always this fear of the selling out as an artist. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
No, that's like, it's a great sort of issue that I think a lot of filmmakers or artists, everyone will encounter once they like make something and they try to put it out there. And like with Buzzkill, like that film I just like made for myself. Like I didn't know who it would be for. Like I just thought it was amusing, and I was like, oh, it's like making me laugh. I'll just like you're saying, just pour here's my life into this project. And I'll get a kick out of it, and like, you know, hopefully some people will like it, sort of out there in the world. I had to kind of really figure out like what to do with it after, and like how to like market it, I guess, like not market it, but like how to make it like appealing to festivals, or like how to kind of get it on radars. And that was a challenge, because I tried the film like starts off as one thing, as like a rom-com, and then it takes like a turn. And I just thought it was like it would be great if nobody knew what to expect, and like they just thought it was a rom-com. And so like I tried at first with festivals, like my whole kind of marketing scheme was just like it's a love story, and and like there's a big like horror element that comes into it, but like I didn't mention that at all. And I thought like, oh, everyone's gonna get like a real kick out of this when the gear shifts. And then I think I realized that wasn't really working. It wasn't attractive to when you're sort of pitching it to people or your log line or things like that. And so I had to spice it up, and I had to kind of like try to appeal to genre festivals. And like I had to change my little blurb and all some of my marketing materials, like my stills. I think like that every film like has stills that you submit to these sort of things. And originally they were really tame. They were just kind of like cutesy characters on a bed. And then I was like, oh, I should put some more that are a little more like have some body horror stuff in them, or something like that. And those ended up getting used more by the genre festivals. And then it was a whole other thing when it came out on YouTube and Vimeo recently, with like the thumbnail and the like the platforms, the people that were like helping me release it, like Vimeo did a staff pick thing, and then I partnered with Alter, who put it on their YouTube. Both of them were like, you need like a sensational thumbnail or you're not going to get any clicks. And I was like, well, I don't want to give anything away. I just wanted like this sort of vague image. And I ended up kind of breaking down and just putting like this wild thumbnail.
It's like the shot, right? The money shot.
Yeah, it's kind of
the money shot, right?
It's kind of the money shot. Yeah. And there's some more to come after that shot in the film that I think still is interesting. But yeah, I was kind of just like, fuck it, like you can have this shot, because they wanted someone wanted to put like there's like a reveal in the last few seconds, and they wanted that as like the marketing material, and I was like, what are you talking about? Like you'll give away the whole twist. And they're like, oh, it's a great image and it has like all this sort of horror elements in it. So then that was a compromise to kind of do the current thumbnail, which has got a lot of horror, but I think it's like, I don't know, it's definitely not cutesy and like a rom-com type thumbnail, but yeah, I don't know. So that was interesting, and it ended up working. I mean, it got a ton of clicks or views or whatever, and so ultimately I'm just like, whatever it kind of takes to get people to watch it.
So we're starting at the end here, so let me reverse this just for my sake. So take me really quickly, and if you see me looking down, I'm just taking notes. I'm just writing stuff down so I can remember to come back to them and not interrupt you. So take me from the beginning. So you're sitting here and you're like, man, there's all these like little horror shorts. They all suck. I could do a better one. Like, what's the mindset? What kicks you off down this road?
That's the mindset. Totally. I mean, and also you mentioned earlier when we were talking, like it's also like I was working on a bunch of commercials. Like that's where I work in commercial animation, and I was just feeling like that corporate sort of like burnout, and it was making a lot of content, and some of it was really cool and gratifying, but like it was stuff for other people. None of it was like kind of my. Even if I was like directing something, it was not my own like idea or my own designs. And so yeah, it all kind of, I was just like, you know what, like I can make a short, I think that, that would sort of like be my own voice in the horror scene. And I hadn't made a short film in a really long time. And so part of it was like, can I still make something? And like, do I still have those skills? And it was also during like the heyday of COVID and all the sort of, I'm in New York, and like the lockdowns were pretty crazy at the beginning, and just like really like, I just didn't have a social life anymore. And so I had all this time just like in my apartment, and that's when, I decided to just like, I was like, all right, I'll just make something while I'm like sitting inside all the time anyway. And so all those factors combined to kicking it off.
So what sparked the actual idea though? Like, so like the concept behind it, did it always start as a full thing, or like a full, the full idea? Or was it like, oh, I have this one little idea and then it kind of evolved over time to be what it was?
Yeah, it's like, it was one idea. It was one sort of piece of imagery. And like, I had like a period in my life where I was like getting eyelashes in my eyes a lot, or other like gunk. And it just seemed to be like constant. I was always like running to like a bathroom at a restaurant, And then there was just one time where I had something in my eye, I couldn't find it for a few days, and like I could feel it, and it was like really, really aggravating. Yeah. And it just like ended up getting like pre-primal, like at a mirror trying to find this eyelash. And then as I was fishing it out, it was just like this whole kind of like adrenaline and disgust and all this stuff, and kind of like pleasurable. And I was like, this is like so memorable and disgusting as I was like pulling it out. And so I just started like drawing a bunch of like doodles while I was at work or whatever, of eyeballs with things coming out of them, bugs coming out of them, stuff like that. And then I was like, how can I put this imagery into like a story? And that's kind of how I work. I'll have like a couple images that I think are really strong, and then I sort of work backwards to figure out how it can exist.
I like that a lot. I think it works really well in the genre that you've made this in, and I think it works really well in the short film world to have one. If you can have one central idea or image, especially that's like really evocative and really cool, and sort of like reverse, engineer a story
like how do you get
from it.
there?
That's a really, really cool concept. But yeah, you have that one image of like, and you're like, okay, how do I make this happen? And you can kind of reverse engineer a whole story.
Yeah. Or like one creature designer. Exactly. Like, I mean, your film, it looks like you're sort of developing this like one freaky deaky thing that is going to like really be interesting to watch.
Yeah. Essentially it's, are you familiar with Overwatch at all?
The video game?
Yeah, the video game.
Yeah.
So there's this monkey in it called Winston, and he's like this lovable like science gorilla, and he's like part of the science team. And so it's like, what if you had that, but he like became a zombie and killed everybody?
I love it. Yeah.
So that's more or less the story. Is like lovable ape or gorilla as part of a science team goes wrong, and your best friend is now your worst. So it's like a mix between like not just your dog, but also your science buddy. So it's like your crew member and dog both in one to like betray you.
And like, some sort of like ancestor, animal relative. There's like something human about it as well.
Yeah. So, and I'm hoping to like kind of breadcrumb it out throughout the story. But anyway, so that's really interesting. So like, what's crazy is like, that makes a lot of sense that you had that experience, and then because it comes across like really, it's very effective. I was telling my wife after watching it, I'm like, dude, I just watched this thing, and I was watching it literally like this. Like I was like, it was great, well done, but at the same time, and I was like, and he strikes this like balance between like kind of funny but kind of awful, like kind of like scary.
It's like you're not bloodless, terrified, but there's like no swearing. It's like bloodless. There were like a few things where I was like, where can I like, what's something that I can ride a line on here? Like, who is this for? Is it? It's not really for kids.
No,
but no, it's not for kids. But like, I think people who are not super into horror, like maybe they could, sit through it. But because I don't know, you could really go over the top with some of it. But mostly, I was like, all you need is like, a few shots and lines that just are visceral, and everyone can relate. Everyone like doesn't like eye stuff.
No, yeah. I think it's
and myself included. So
you lived through it. That's what's funny to me about a lot of effective and like good suspense and horror and stuff like that is oftentimes it's someone's like processing their own stuff.
And, it's therapy.
Yeah, and people will get like mad at it. They're like, why'd you make something so? You're like, well, I had to live through it, bitch. Like, so.
Yeah, like I had to like I'm exercising this out of my system.
Yeah, you just got a little taste of what it was like to go through myself, and then you're like complaining about it, like, oh, why'd you have to do that? And I'm like, well, now you know what it's like. All right, so you have this thing stuck in your eye. You make some drawings. Then that turns into you just storyboarding, or you getting friends together. What's the
Yeah, so it was, I'll like quickly recap it. It was like, I wrote a script. I sent the script to like a bunch of friends, and it was short. Like, I'm just taking a short. So it was like two or three pages or something. And then kind of got their feedback and like, sort of tuned it up or whatever. And then storyboarded it all out, like excessively. Cause like in hand-drawn, like 2D animation, you really sort of figure everything out in pre-production so that once you get into animation, you're not like deleting scenes or cutting anything like afterwards. You really just want to know like how long every shot is, like down to the frame length. And so I made these storyboards and then put them into an animatic, which is like, you know, they're on a timeline. You can like watch it in a quick time. And that animatic had scratch audio. Like I recorded myself as every character.
That's always fun, especially in a romance scene.
Yeah, it's really funny. I'm like wooing myself.
Yeah, you're like, oh, me.
yeah. And then it was like finding music from other like existing films like Breakfast Club and you know, John Hughes stuff for the beginning, and then Reanimator and Maniac and Suspiria and all these sort of things like for the horror stuff, and just like little snippets of things, little stingers or sometimes full tunes, and trying to create like the tone or the mood, and which is sort of like, I didn't want it to be like dread. It's supposed to be like kind of fun, kind of campy fun. Like there was like a tone to the music that I think helps the viewer like understand that it's not super serious.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that was all put into this animatic, and then sent that around again to people, a lot of coworkers, and then it and sort of workshopped it a bit, and then that just sat on a shelf for like 2 years. I went back to work, I got really busy, and then COVID happened, and Dustin.
Oh, that was pre-COVID.
That was all like in 2018. Yeah, it was just
this
like
makes me feel so much better.
Yeah. It's a long road. It's always
you're like, dude, it's been how many years I've been working on this thing, and then I'm like, oh, okay, so it does take that long to do something good anyway, right? Like you can crap something out overnight, but the terrifying. Tell me if you were scared of this, or if you just knew the whole time. But like the terrifying part for me is like, what if I do all this work and effort, and then like it's not good, or it is good, but just nobody gives a frick, right? Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Like, what do I do? Is that relatable to you, or is it just like you were just like in the moment? You're like, I'm just making this thing. It's fun. I'm just making it.
It was a bit of both. I think like I didn't really talk much about the production. Like I didn't tell a lot of people I was making it because I felt like I didn't want the pressure of you know, my coworkers and people to be like, Pete's making another animated film, like it, you know, better be good or whatever. And so I just like, I really didn't tell anyone. I didn't post anything about it. And I just kind of like quietly made it, and people knew, like I was sharing it, but I don't think like I don't know, my friends, my family, like they're not necessarily like all horror hounds or like people that understand. So like, you know, my parents would be like, no, okay, like it looks, like keep going, like it's looking good. But I was like, you know, they're not really I'm not really making it for them. So you know, I was really kind of getting like, you know, you get self-doubt, I guess, basically. You get so deep in it, and you're like, is anyone, like, who's going to care about this? But you just kind of you have to just like remember back to like the passion of when you were creating it, the pre-production and designing and all that, and you're like, yeah, I remember I was so excited about this, and you just hope that was like genuine, and that that, because you lose like you get desensitized the project. So you know,
I'm like, nobody sets out to make a bad movie. Nobody's like, oh yeah, this is gonna suck, let's make a sucky movie. Like, because there's a certain sense of like, oh well, you didn't try hard enough, or you didn't like really believe. It's like I you know, I'm part of this is just like our world we live in, but like in my head there's a part of me that's like, I don't know if anything is anything. Like maybe all of it's just like colliding through space, flying around. Like sometimes something blows up and you have no idea why. Like did Peter Jackson like in, you look at like Star Wars, for instance, and like everyone that watched that thought it was going to suck, right? And it ended up being like brilliant, right? And everyone's like, what the heck? And I can't tell you why like Fifth Element works. By all rights, it shouldn't work. Like, but by all you look at that and you go like, no, this is just a mess. There's no way. And then it's a huge hit. And then you look at like Jupiter Ascending, and everyone's like, oh, of course Jupiter Ascending was going to fail. And you're like, but like, it's not really any different than Fifth Element, guys. Like this crazy space opera thing. But for some reason, one of them, you're like, that one worked. And the other one, you're like, nope. And like, you can dissect it all you want as a critic, but there's no way you can actually tell me why one of them worked or why one of them didn't. And everyone working on it wasn't like, oh, this is going to suck. It was like, I don't know. You know, so I know it's just really funny to me when you're working on something and you're like, I have no clue what the universe is going to do with this or not. But
yeah, it's true. It happens. It happens to everybody, I think, who works on a film and is on it for long enough. You just like, you don't know if the jokes are funny anymore. Like everything that you or like the surprises or the scares or whatever you're putting in it. It's like it loses the impact because you are sitting with it every day, day in and day out, and you're sort of like, you just trust, I guess, that there was a period where it was exciting to you, and you just hope that it will all kind of land. But a lot of that stuff too comes together, like, you know, after you animate or shoot or whatever. It's like with Star Wars, it's like, you know, you have to you have to get the right score and the right, you know, sort of editing and animation. It's different. You try to figure all that out beforehand, but it's like a lot of it kind of gets like found at the back end too. And so yeah, there's stuff up in the air the whole time you're working on it.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, there's stuff that like seemingly isn't working, and then some magic happens in the edit, and you get like a Pulp Fiction moment, right, where it's like suddenly this works. This went from not working to working, and it was all just like a matter of rearranging things, and which is sort of insane to think about. Like, you could shoot a whole movie, have it either work or not work, and then in the edit it either gets like made or destroyed based on like just simply the order of scenes, like, you know. And it's, I don't know, that's where I like look at everything like, I don't know what's kind of like, and it's like, that's what I was thinking. I was like, and what sucks is you can't even trust like audience reactions. Like, you can preview stuff to an audience and have the audience be like, this is great or this sucks, like, and they can all be completely wrong, because like once you get it out to the larger world, it's a completely different bag of fish, you know, which isn't a saying, but I just said it.
It's a bag of fish.
Yeah. So I don't know what saying I was going for there, but
it's a
I don't know what it is. Anyways, but so you're sitting there, you get the animatic done. It's been a couple of years. COVID hits. You're like, you know what? I got a ton of time. I got nothing to do. Why don't I work on this short film? And then you kind of do
call up a few friends,
animation in that part.
Yep. Yeah. Like I just like, I knew, sort of like you were saying with your short, like you get a couple like artists to help you on it so that you can speed things up. Because if I was going to do like all the background art or like everything like that, I just knew it was going to add like another year to the production. So I have a friend who is a background artist, and I reached out to him just like asking if he knew any recommendations, and he was like, he was just like, dude, I want to be on this. Like, I have nothing to do, and I would I love the story or whatever. And he was like, let me get on the project. So he ended up joining, and it was just the two of us for the production portion. Like, he did all the background art, and I did all the animation and coloring the characters and things like that. And then we just I composited everything together afterwards. And I mean, it was like pretty simple. Like, it's just, there's nothing too flashy about the film. It's pretty traditional. But and then I had, score and sound design and, some help on the back end with some like effects, glows and things like that. But yeah, I mean, it really was like a tiny crew, and we just kind of like muscled it out for like a couple months on the production. And then after that wrapped, after the animation was done and then all the background art was done, I think like it just kind of became like another kind of like nights and weekends thing where it was be like another 6 months or so where I was just like slowly putting shots together and compositing them, and we're sound designing it and things like that. And then and then it was just like, it was, started submitting it to festivals, like kind of almost finished, and just kind of trying to figure out how you even do festivals anymore. So out of the game. And so it's like there's like a whole other life to the film once you finish, which is like all you focus on is trying to finish, and then afterwards you're like, oh my god, like there's like a whole other job here. You have to like make spreadsheets and spend money and all these things to try to promote it and get it out there. Yeah, which I think is like most people's goal, unless you're just kind of making quick content for, your social media or whatever. It's like you want it to get in a festival or be, I don't know, bought, shown on TV or something. Like you want to reach an audience basically.
Yeah. So one more part of production, and then I really want to talk about the afterlife, like you're mentioning, but. When it comes to production, I was really impressed, and I think this could have made or broken like the whole piece. And it was, I think the acting was actually fantastic. Like, I think it was what it needed to be. It got the right level of like not too serious, but it didn't feel amateur at all, but it also didn't feel like over, like somebody hired somebody that was, I don't know. I see a lot of animation and like it breaks down in the voice acting because it's like, oh, I just like brought in my friend or my girl that I know that I was like, you should be on this. or a guy that I know, and then like it falls apart because they can't get it quite right. And then there's other times where it's like there's like, you know, professional like cartoon actors, but then they like overdo stuff, right? It's like, well, I'm in a thing and and you're like, that's just
so cartoony. Yeah.
I don't know. So how was that? Did you direct them, or did you they just kind of do their own thing?
So there's only like 2 characters in it. And one is played by an actress called Kelly McCormack. And she's like a character actress. Like she works in live action mainly, and but she writes and produces films and things like that. She's in like that League of Their Own series on Amazon as one of the main girls, and she's also in like Letterkenny and like these other.
Oh yeah,
she's got these like little roles and things. But I had met her like way long ago when we were both seniors in college, and she was a voice on my thesis film.
Oh, okay.
And so like I had made another short, an animated short, and I think I put out like a casting call on Craigslist or something, and she came, and like we were both just like kids, and she was trying to become an actress, I was trying to become an animator. She voiced like a lead character in my short, and I did pretty well in festivals, and we always like kept in touch. And I was always like, oh, I'd love to like work with Kelly again, because she has a great way of like you're saying, like she's maybe because she's not a cartoon like voiceover actress by nature, like she's just very like grounded. Like her performances are just very like, she can be zany and over the top, or like she has such a range, but like she always just feels relatable to me. And she has a great way of like kind of like when she's playing a character that's upset or something, like she sort of like huffs through her teeth, and she's just like has a great way of like and I just love that. So I was like, oh, I want to get Kelly on this. And pre-pandemic, like she was just so busy on her commitments and stuff. So like it never lined up, and it never occurred to me to do anything remote recording or anything. Yeah. So after, everything sort of like screeched to a halt, like I reached out again, and I was like, I heard Hollywood's all shut down. Like, what are you up to? And she was like up in Vancouver, I think, because she was like at her parents' house. And we just recorded remotely. Like I called her on, she had a microphone set up, and I called her on like on my cell phone, and like just sort of directed her through that. And she gave a great performance. It was just one afternoon at just a couple hours, and we just kind of tried to get as much as we could. She gave a bunch of different versions of each take. And then I played the other character in it, which was not necessarily the plan. I was always like the temp track character, and after we got Kelly's voice recording, I cut it all into our edit, and I still had mine in there because I hadn't cast the male lead, right? And it was just like it was working well enough, like exactly, and it was still during all that sort of everything was messed up in the world, and so I was like, why complicate it by trying to cast somebody else? And the character Rick that I play, he only has like a couple lines, so it's like, this is fine. And after we got her performance in there, like I re-recorded his lines a bit in some places to try to complement it a little bit, which was nice, like just to have that flexibility. Like after dinner, I could just kind of like quickly make some adjustments to things. But like, yeah, I mean, those performances I knew they were going to be really important. Her performance mainly because like, the story goes like off the rails, and it was like, you have to like, even if you know what's going on as a viewer at first, like you have to just kind of like stick with the character. And I was like, I didn't want a character that was like, golly, whoa, like, doing all this like cartoony stuff. I wanted someone who's like, oh, like, Jesus, what the fuck is happening? Like something just like a reaction that felt normal, as opposed to, I watch all these horror films now and always screaming at the screen that like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you explaining what, like, whatever. Like, there's all these things where I'm like, just say what everyone would normally say there. And characters don't do it for plot convenience. But anyway, Buzzkill's a super short film, but I was just like, it'd be great if these characters were like actually like being like, what? Like, what? What's happening? Or just like, reacting in a way that I feel like is more natural. So that I can sort of like relate.
It's really cool watching, because she does have that range. It was really neat to watch her whole spiral as she becomes more and more what she really is, right?
Yeah, yeah. She's
you know, and she steps out like, you know, and it's kind of funny because like you do this fun little thing where like she starts almost as like a victim, right? Like she's starting as like this, like, oh, I don't know what
she's gonna get, something gonna happen to her. Yeah, it's like a whole trope.
Gonna be a jerk, and then it ends up being like that she's actually the horrible thing that happens. And there's this great moment where it's such a Hollywood thing to do, but I love it. And it's like he goes and like takes the money right on the nightstand, right? And you're like,
love that moment.
You're like, oh, good, now I can hate you. I don't have to feel bad. You know, it's like a character like kicks a dog or something. He's like, get out of my way, you stupid dog, and he kicks it, and the dog like scampers off, and then Godzilla steps on him. And it's like, you know, was that justifying a Godzilla step? Probably not. That dude's dead. He had a family, he had friends. But I feel less bad knowing that you kicked a dog, right? I'm like, you know, it's okay to hate you.
I'm glad you mentioned that. It's like that was such a that was the thing that I just put in the script. I didn't think it was anything, and audiences always like giggle at it. And I get, like, it is funny. Like when I was animating it, I was like, okay, yeah, we'll like play up this sort of sketchiness of this little interaction that he's having with the money, but like I just needed something for him to do. Like he was just sitting in the room. And I was like, what if, you know, if you're left alone in someone's room, you don't know them, you start poking around, maybe. I don't know. Not that I do, but, you know.
Like I would
but like, no, I mean, I think everyone gets curious. And like, I would never like take money, but like I was like, what if you find something and then you just start kind of like, you know, pocketing things, and that would sort of like lead to, you know, him sort of his path of discoveries. He shouldn't have touched any of that in the first place, right? And it was a bit of a way to show that he's, you know, he's not like this victimless character. He's kind of a jerk too. He's up to something. And so
you get some comeuppance almost. You know, it's like
I don't know if it's like, you know, if his fate is what
it's never
what someone should get for taking $2, but maybe in this day and age, that's what we need more of.
Some Judge Dredd type justice.
There's
a moment
justice.
There's a lot of, I love those moments, dude. There's moments like that in you know, in all sorts of things. It's like the lawyer in Jurassic Park that like against Aiden, and then there's all sorts of little things where you're just like, oh man, because like one of the worst things ever. I talk about this all the time. I don't know, but it sticks in everyone's mind. If you've seen the new Jurassic Park, not the new, but the new one. There's like 3 new ones.
Yeah, but the first of the new ones.
Yeah, and there's this.
I know what you're going to talk about. Yeah.
Everyone remembers it because everyone just goes, that's so unfair. She's just like tasked with watching these kids. So like the main character's being an asshole. She's not doing her job of watching her nephews. But because she's like the pretty star, she gets to like just live, and she's untouchable. She has plot armor. But her poor little secretary gets killed in the most brutal way possible. Like 6 times per day. And you're just like, all she was doing was her job, and she actually cared about the kids. And why she gets killed is she's like telling them like, oh, get out of here. Like, and you're just like, that just sucks. And it's
I know,
because, you know, in real life, it's like, look, like sometimes like violence is indiscriminate, you know what I mean? And sometimes like people that don't deserve it, get bad things happen to people. But it's like in the movie theater, you're sitting like, that was so, I just felt so bad. And it's like, I wish she would have kicked the dog. Like, I wish there was a moment where like she's running and the kid's like, wait, and she's like, get off me, you know, and then like,
something to just,
her. And then you're like, okay, now I can hate her.
Totally. You know, steal $2.
Right, exactly. So you do the little the little tiny thing, and that justifies like, okay, now we can murder you.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, you get this actor, you get it all made, you get out there. What does that look like for you, circuit? You know, like festival circuit wise, but especially, I'm really curious about Alter. And that whole thing, because I've looked at it a few times trying to figure out how it works, and it's not super transparent to me how that whole thing operates and what the deal is. So I was just kind of curious about how you went about that.
Sure. So festivals, you know, Film Freeway, it's like what everyone uses now. You put your short up on there, it's got a little profile page, and then you know, just I again, like I was saying, I didn't really know like who the audience was for this short. And I should have done a bit more research at the start, because I just started applying it kind of willy-nilly to like big festivals. Like I was like, oh, Tribeca, like you know, like And then in hindsight, you know, like it didn't get into Tribeca, but like I looked at their animation program and it's like by Whoopi Goldberg, like programmed by Whoopi Goldberg,
Right.
and like full of these like little kind of kids shorts. And I was like, oh yeah, no, like that was not money well spent.
So, you almost have to profile the festival itself as an audience, right? Like whoever's doing the picking, their taste is gonna matter, not just that they're not just gonna sit there and be like objective and be like, well, somebody I know is going to like this, so I'm gonna choose this, even though it's not my cup of tea.
Yeah, exactly. And so like I think also like doing research, I started like if there was a festival that looked interesting, like Screenfest or something like that. I was like, oh, everyone knows about this like horror fest. I went on their website before I submitted and was like, do they have an animated shorts program, or do they have like a midnight shorts program or whatever? So like to try to find these things that I thought were relevant to my film, and they did, and that's why I would submit. And that was kind of what helped me narrow down where to put it, because I started looking for like midnight short programs with the sort of like weird, like crazy stuff, because it didn't quite fit into, it wasn't like a comedy or like it got programmed in some fests in like comedy blocks, which is like crazy to me. But
I would also be in those audience, like the look around is somebody's like sitting here like, oh, we just saw some like little romantic comedy, some rom-com short, like let's check out this one, and then they're just like,
and like the Buzzkill starts off like pretty tame, so like you get kind of into it, and you're like, oh yeah, like okay, it's like maybe this is a comedy, and then you're like, what the fuck? So there was so, and then it was like animation festivals, like I tried to apply it to those, and that was kind of hit or miss. I think a lot of them didn't know what to do with it. They don't really like, there's not a lot that I was finding that had like late night or like adult animation. A lot of them are sort of about student animation, experimental animation, commercial animation, general like narrative animation, but like I wasn't finding too many that had like bizarre like late night stuff. Underground film festivals were like a good route. Like there's a bunch that are called whatever, Boston Underground or Sydney Underground or these things, and like those all had kind of crazy programming. And so that was how I kind of like learned where to look to put it. And then after it got into a couple of the genre festivals, like I think the biggest one was maybe Fantastic Fest. Okay. And that one, which was like, I was like totally surprised. Like, I don't know, that was just like a shot in the dark whether they would take it. But after it got in there, that got like a ball rolling. I think people saw that it had been programmed, and then people were reaching out, like inviting it to festivals or inviting it for consideration, like without like a submission fee sort of thing. And so, that's where it sort of picked up steam, and then it really started doing all the fall, like genre festival horror stuff. And then, after like a year of that, I was kind of like, all right, I wasn't applying anymore to stuff. I had blown all my money on film festivals. And so, they still trickle in, like it's still playing this fall in some, but, it's just ones that are reaching out at this point, being like, hey, can we put it in our midnight program? And I'm like, have it, like whatever you want. Which is great. I think you always want your short to like get legs and like snowball like that. Right. And then you don't have to have your foot on the gas as much. But I started trying to figure out where to put it after the festivals, and I don't really have a huge social media like presence. Right. My YouTube channel is like not the most active. All that sort of stuff. So, I knew if I was just going to throw it up on my website, I'd probably get a couple hundred hits. But I was trying to figure out a way to go bigger, and I met the altar people. There's a woman named Sophie, and she's like, she's sort of, I think she's like the creator of it, but she's one of like the sort of altar head in charge. I met her at Fantastic Fest, and we had a quick combo, but nothing was like really discussed. And then months later, I had like another friend who had a short picked up by Alter, and I was like, how'd you get on Alter? And he was like, oh, Sophie, I think you met her. He's like, let me connect you in an email. And so that was kind of how it happened. And we just, we sort of talked about whether they would want to host it on their platform and all that sort of stuff. I know that they do, I think you can submit your short directly to them. And so, they do sort of like source that stuff, but they also, it seems like Alter goes to a lot of the genre festivals and they scout stuff. So like they look for things. So Sophie had seen Buzzkill at Fantastic Fest, I guess. And so she was aware of it and didn't need too much convincing, I guess. And so that's how it works out. And I don't know. I guess I can talk about like the sort of the process of getting on Alter, but it's basically there's a contract that you sign and it's non-exclusive, which I thought was really appealing. So I still own all the rights to Buzzkill.
Right.
I can do whatever I want with it. I can put it on my site. It can still be in festivals. But they have like the non-exclusive rights to host it on their, all their platform, their website, their YouTube. I think they have a Roku channel, like all this sort of stuff. And they give you a fee. And it's, it's not like the craziest fee in the world, but it's not nothing either.
Right.
It was like, you spend so much money making these films and doing the festival stuff that like, you're just never going to recoup it.
Yeah. So is it just like a flat rate? There's no option for like residuals?
At least like the contract that I dealt with was just like a flat rate, like a one-time thing. And I think there's like a clause in it that, I could, if I ever need to like pull it off or something, like it was not like a very aggressive contract. And it was also not very like huge, which was great. Like I could read it.
Nice, yeah.
And like I understood like everything they were talking about in it. And it felt like a good deal because I just wanted to get more eyes on it, and they have a whole like user base that is just like ravenous for everything that they post. So it just felt like a good way to get more more exposure for Buzzkill versus just uploading it to my own channel or whatever.
Right.
So that was the route that I ended up taking.
Did you have you looked into like Shudder at all?
I haven't. I know that they do they have like a shorts thing that they do?
Yeah. I have a friend that has a short on there that's done pretty well. And I need to talk to him more about the details, but I know at the time anyway, this is like pre-COVID, which means it's forever ago. He had the option of doing like a flat fee or like residuals, and he would have made way more if he did like, hey, a percentage of the views or whatever. He didn't know. You never know, right? But
you never know. Yeah, exactly.
Alter kind of just hosts it. Yeah, and they do give you some sort of money, but
it's like it's shy of 1,000, but like it's again, I'm not expecting to make any money off of a short, so I was kind of like, okay, like this is, and right, exactly. Like, it's not like I felt like I had no options and I had to do this or something. It was just kind of like, hey, it's all like bonus at this point because, the film did pretty well in festivals and picked up awards and things. And like, there's nothing else I can really, like, that I really want out of it other than just like get more people to see it because festival audiences are limited. Like, it's only, 50 or 100 people seeing it at every fest.
Right.
And so once it went on Alter, like, it like went crazy and like racked up like, I think it's at like 400,000 views or something, which is just like way more than I could have ever. I thought we'd get like 10,000 views.
Yeah, I think you'll easily break 1 million before the end of the year. So
I mean, that would be really cool. And it's but I don't know what any of these numbers mean. Like, I don't know, like, I don't know what's impressive to anyone. I was like, whoa, we're at 12K, and like everyone's like, my friends are like, is that good? And I was like, I don't know. It's more than I would ever get.
Yeah, I have a friend, not a friend. There's a guy online that said this, and it's really stuck with me. But he's like, whenever you get views online, like, try to picture that many people in a room. So like back when I was in like film school and you were in film school, if we got like 100 people in a room, we're like, holy crap, this is a big moment. We'd be like so nervous. And then you get 100 views online, you're like, this sucks. This is no good. You're like, 100 people is a lot of people, guy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just because you can't see them all in one place, But so it's like, 12,000. It's like you think about it, you're like, that's like a lot of people. Yeah. That's more than any. Yeah. That's more than any movie theater I've ever been in. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like IMAX, like that's maybe a couple hundred people. Like maybe you'll get like 200 in a big giant theater, and it's like, the idea that our world is so weird, but the idea that like 12,000 isn't a lot, right? You know what I mean? It's like,
I know. Yeah. It's like not impressive.
blowing. But there is a difference between quality of viewers and quantity of viewers, right? Like the older people are very, I would say probably like mostly passive viewers. Like they're going to watch it, but not really take any actions afterward.
Yeah.
They're here for their weekly alter video. And then versus what's cool about festivals is like one festival viewer ended up getting you like 1 million viewers, right? Or 500,000 viewers or whatever, right? So it's like, you could have much more valuable viewers in certain smaller venues.
I think so. That's a good point.
Yeah. So
because
like, just to talk to the artist, you know, it's like, you got to change your mindset about this because it's so easy to look and be like, oh, nobody saw it. And it's like, yeah, but who saw it? And you know, is that somebody like, would you rather your film be viewed by 1 million strangers or by like, you know, whoever your favorite director is, right? Like, you know, by Guillermo del Toro, and he'd be like, that's really cool. Like, I'd much rather Hideo Kojima see my film than like 1 million people that I don't care about. You know,
I completely agree. Yeah. And like at festivals, like I met so many other filmmakers like similar to me and my, you know, sort of my I don't know, my approach, my likes, all these sort of things. And it was like a community there, and like, yeah, you make friends with people, and like, you know, I don't know, you and I like connected through social media because, you know, things came on each other's radar and stuff. And it's
I'm one of the high quality viewers that takes action.
No, but you really meet, like, I met these other filmmakers that like you travel the circuit together in a way, like your films are kind of like in the same cycle. So there would be like, you know, sort of people I'd see at different festivals, and where they'd be swinging through New York for something, and we'd go grab a drink, like unrelated to anything. And it's just really cool to like be like, hey, yeah, these other people who are making like body horror shorts or like animated horror or whatever. And and I met them because, you know, they were in this little tiny theater versus like, you know, YouTube. It's kind of surprising, or like any of the online stuff. Like I watched Buzzkill on like a couple platforms, and like, you know, not too much comes of it. Like you get a ton of views and you get like a lot of comments, which are fun. Like everyone's enthusiastic comments and things like that. But it's not like, you know, your doors are being knocked down just by people.
Right.
Which, you know, I don't know. Everyone hopes that like something like you'll get to connect with a bunch of crazy things. But like, I don't know. It doesn't necessarily happen. I think even if you do have like a film that's successful, you have to just kind of be happy with like, oh, I met a bunch of cool people at film festivals, and like we'll be friends, and you know, support each other's work or whatever in the future, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And that's kind of what I'm talking about, what I was talking about earlier, where it's like you don't have any control what like the quote unquote universe is going to do with whatever it is you have. Like sometimes you make something like 9, right? And then like Tim Burton picks it up and you get a feature film. And then sometimes you make something that's, I don't want to say like better than 9, you know what I mean? Like, but somebody comes up with something, you're like, oh, that's really cool. And then like it just like, that's just exists, and it wasn't the right time. You know, things didn't collide into each other the way that we would have liked them to.
It's kind of like whoever just happens to be out there and see it, and then act on it, like want to like actually send a message or whatever to be like, hey, we should connect. And you know, it's happened, but it's like, you know, not as you would think like, oh, it's gonna be like blowing up, but like it's mostly just like watching little numbers go up.
Yeah, like I'm sort of shocked by the lack of. It seems like Alter does a really good job with it, but they did a great job. I'm kind of shocked at the lack of like proper talent scouts right now. Like there's so many things that like I see in modern filmmaking in Hollywood with giant budgets and even TV shows. I'm like, you could have easily gotten, you know, X, Y, or Z person from the indie space and been like, hey man, let's just give you like 10K and like make this thing real quick, versus, you know, going out and hiring some giant studio that's like doesn't really do a great job with it. It's always interesting to me to see, like, because I'm the type of person that's like, I'm always looking for new weird spiky things, which to me, if you're like an art director, is your whole job. Like your whole job should be constantly scouring everything. It used to be like you would have had 20 different magazines, and those zines would have had like, you would have had like little indie artists, you would have had some crazy like, well, this guy's doing some really weird like whatever over here. That's where you get like the, you know, you're like, I just discovered this guy.
Yeah.
And same thing if you're a music producer, that's your job. You should be going around. But then for some reason, like when it comes to some of the visual arts, and this isn't like there's always exceptions. Someone's going like, well, I know a producer, I know an art director or whatever. But like I find like 9 times out of 10, everyone has like the same 4 sources. And I love those sources. Like I'm like, yeah, I'm just as big of a fan of Akira, and whatever 5 or 6 other things that you guys are a fan of Alien and I'm making my
point say that.
Yeah, Alien and and Mobius, right? Like we're all fans of the same people. Like, but
Sure.
There should be other people that you're finding that are like really weird and spiky and interesting that you haven't that haven't been tapped yet, right? Like get some of that inspiration and get some of those people. And I'm constantly trying to like broaden my scope, and I'm into some weird stuff when it comes to like I try to like, and he's not a small name, right? But like Peter Chung is sort of a forgotten character of animation, right, from like the early thousands, and I'm kind of looking right now at like a lot of weird animatrix type stuff where I'm like, what did we do in the early thousands? We were like what's weird is I don't get the sense everyone was on drugs, but we were just high on like the millennium.
Something in the air.
It was like, oh, it's 2000. It has to be completely different and weird. And like, just the amount of like weird stuff we were willing to play with. And then tech was just becoming like a big thing. Like we were really moving out of the...
They're blending like 3D and 2D variety sort of things were becoming multimedia. Yeah, Animatrix was awesome. Like that, everything in that thing was really cool. And we don't see much like that now.
Well, and what's weird is like almost every animation at that time was like, the story wise anyway, was like you were starting out as like whatever the story started as would be some interesting little start, and then it's like now kill God, right? That would be like the end of it, right? It's like, and by the end you were always like the character was confronting like a world like demon or God or
it's just like mindless like visual garbage.
And you're just like, what the frick? I kind of love it at the same time. It's a mess, but it's like a mess I can kind of get into. And I'm like, where are people not drawing inspiration from so I can like kind of pick some gems out?
It's like film festivals was like a great, I saw so many cool things, like short films and stuff that you would never really find otherwise. And like I would always like prioritize going to the short film showcases over like the feature stuff, just because the features find their way onto Amazon, or some of them were in theaters and things. But it's like, there's so many like weird shorts I saw that were really cool. I
love short films, dude. My whole bag is short films. It's just so cool that you can. I kind of like the fact you don't have to have like a full story. Like we don't need to know how your character became the way they are. Like we just
you can just drop in.
And it's cool. And sometimes I think stories are ruined. It's like looking at certain like I don't always want to compare things the way, but it's like looking at a Picasso or something, like some cool painting, and being like, what's the backstory? Like, where did they come from? Like, what's this character's motivation? And you're like, it's just a little window, guys. It's a window into something really neat that gets your brain ticking. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I love my favorite art piece is the Gladiator. And it's in the Phoenix Art Museum, actually, out here in Phoenix, Arizona, and we have it permanently. It's so cool. And all there's the whole crowd, and they're all saying "kill the guy," and the Gladiator's looking up to the Caesar at the time with his foot up.
Wow, this is cool.
And he's like, should I kill him? And everyone's like, kill him. There's one guy. If you look through the audience, there's one dude who's like, let him live, man. And there's only one in the entire Colosseum. And it's like, I don't need to know the story. I don't need to know that that's the dude on the ground's dad or brother, or like there's like I could just look at that and appreciate that moment for that moment. And I love photography, and I do a bit of street photography, and I love that for the same reason. I'm like, I don't know the backstory of this person. I don't know what they're going through. I have this great shot of a guy in Tennessee, and he in Knoxville, and he has 2 cigarettes. He's a cowboy, and he has like 1 cigarette up here, 1 cigarette down here. I'm like, some days it's a 2 cigarette day. Like you just, some days you just like, okay, I'm switching out. I need both. I can't.
Yeah. And like I think you think longer about these things if you don't have everything explained.
Right.
Like I like that was sort of thing with Buzzkill, and a lot of the things that I make, like I just don't like an ending that is like super like firm. I like, you think more about things afterwards. If you're like, well, what happens next, or like what's going to happen to that thing that I just saw, and and then at least for me, like I go home seeing other shorts like that, and I just like, I think about them a lot more than the ones that are like done, like cut, next story or whatever. It's the ones that are a bit more open-ended, or just drop you in the middle of something and you have to kind of figure out like where you are. Like I like those.
Yeah, and there's something more magical, about that. There's one more thing I wanted to get on. Oh, you were talking about thinking more about it and versus having the story. Because like the story of the 2 cigarettes, if I really think about it, is probably just like his buddy went to the bathroom, and so he's like, "Hey, hold my cigarette."
Maybe
that's the fun. I wanted the guy that has 2 cigarettes, right? And so it's like, don't tell me the story. I don't want to know. I can make up a little magic around it. But that's what I love. There's this feeling of when you first start like a new video game, for instance, or like a new, you start watching a movie and you don't know what's going to happen. There's this optimism that you have of just be like discovering and looking around, but this is so cool. And I think when we like try to tie a neat little bow on everything, it kind of ruins some of that feeling. And if it's too long, you start finding things like, you start looking around and go like, oh, that kind of didn't work. And you weren't able to tie that. Like, and I'm sure you know this yourself. Like if someone came to you and said like, let's make a full movie of that short, you'd be like, I don't even know how we do that.
Yeah, there's nothing else to really do.
Like I guess you could come up. The best I come up with is my guilty pleasure is like pulp like stuff. So your stuff is like perfect in that realm. But like there's a comic series from the 90s, no, from the thousands, from the mid thousands called Hack and Slash, and it's just like it's this like big. Essentially, he's Frankenstein and he's Hack, I believe, and then Slash is Cassandra Slash, I think her name is, and she's like this like girl in a skirt that kills things with its swords, or the bat probably, and so and they go around like solving sort of like monster problems in small towns where they're killing all the teenagers, right? That's like generally the thing. It's not,
it's all you need.
Yeah, at all.
It sounds entertaining,
but it's pulpy AF. And there's a sense to me that I'm like, I kind of wish this was just like a one-off, because like it gets to the point where you're like, oh, and now they have an arch nemesis, and now they're like, and you kind of like, well, then this guy happened. You're like, okay, I get that there's people that want to come back week after week and they want an arc, right? They want some sort of a progressive story happening, but it's really hard to balance that. I've always loved. I think that's why I have such a fondness for Genndy Tartakovsky and for like Samurai Jack and Primal and and what he did with a lot of those, where it's like you can really watch any episode isolated of those shows and just get a good experience without needing to the full thing. It's like there's a samurai, he's in the future, go, right? And then you're like, oh, interesting, like he has these samurai values, but he's in this like cyberpunk world. And there's something about that art, where it's like, okay, maybe if you did something like that, we could make this a serial thing. But otherwise, I don't know if everything should be a 2-hour full length thing.
Yeah, I agree. And that's a thing that comes up at a lot of Q&As and things, where people are like, well, are you going to develop this into you're going to get it with yours. Like, everyone's going to be like, oh, when's the feature coming? And like, maybe that is the plan, but like, maybe it's not. And it's always kind of like expected.
Yeah.
And you have to be like, well, I'm just focusing on like short poppy candy content or whatever, like, or I just want to make pulpy stuff or whatever. And, but I think everyone's expecting that things are going to like build to a feature, which works. I think, definitely for live action. I mean, some of those shorts are like half an hour long, right? And you can kind of feel that they can be expanded, but for like little 5-minute things, it's like, I don't know how many more, how do you drag this out longer than 5 minutes? I don't know.
Right.
How long is your short going to be?
Oh, it's like a minute.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. It's not even, dude. It's a minute, 20 seconds, I think right now.
Cool.
And like, I intentionally scored it before animating it. So normally you do the score afterward. But I wanted to. I like editing to music, and
me too.
the danger I have I do the same thing with music that I do with other stuff. Like I love these weird little like, and some of them aren't that little, right? Some of them are like very popular songs, but they're interesting in a way or one way or another, you know? So, you know, there's a band called like Uncle that I really love, and a few other bands that are like really cool that are like, you know, just out there. And so you find these weird bands and you fall in love with the temp track, right? Is a problem. And so I'll edit something to my temp track and I'm like, oh, this is so much. That's happened to me. The first short film I edited that was like an action, you know, it had like a budget and stuff when I was coming out of college. It was like our senior thing as well, graduation piece. And as the editor on it, it was a horrible, awful experience that I never want to relive. But the temp track was so much better than anything we ended up with. I had this like fantastic like salsa, because it was called Eduardo and Ted, and it was about this guy that works at a phone conference center. He gets bored, he starts using alter egos and like character voices to interact with people, and then somebody like falls in love with his like character voice, right, of Eduardo, who's this like Spanish like bullfighter guy, but he's like some loser like white dude, you know. And so whenever he's Eduardo, I have this like dun, 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 you know, this very salsa-y music, and then whenever he's Ted, it's like not that, you know. And so you fall in love with it, and then someone comes and scores it, and you're like, I would have rather we just got the rights to the song I put in there.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I had it scored before doing any of the animation, and so that locks us in though to like a short. It gives us some boundaries, which is nice. So otherwise I would just spiral off like forever and scope creep the crap out of it.
I think that's a good plan. I mean, I like editing to music as well. And then, I mean, if you already have it, it's like it's not temp music anymore. So you have it.
Yeah, but I've gotten the same questions already where people are like, "This is too cool for just a 1 minute animation." When's it? I'm like, dude, this 1 minute animation is killing me. Like, you want me to try to do like a thing? And I know like if you could get more budget and stuff, but
yeah, you use it maybe to attract people to the next one. Someone can help you, fund it or produce it or something. Hopefully.
Yeah, so I have a long-term goal, and I kind of want to ask you about how you feel about the state of things, because you took a very traditional, quote unquote, like route, right? Like festivals, circuits, and then get it put out there. I sort of detect, and I could be wrong. I'm probably in my own bubble, but I think I want to say there should be right now this like golden age of independent underground filmmaking, because everything is so accessible and so cheap, and especially digital storytelling, like things that you could never do before, like animation, you know. And it's, for me, 3D animation like should be popping off, like I think, and it's sort of has on and off, like there's been little like blips, but I haven't seen like the big kind of movement I've been wanting to see. And so my goal, you know, right now is to make that happen. My cat is suddenly deciding she wants love. Hi. Can you wait? Can you wait? This is Aloy. She's a fluffy princess.
Oh, she's so fluffy.
She's so fluffy. Yeah, I saw him in the background there. Her the best little bump. But
wait, Alec, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I have to run in 5 minutes. I didn't realize it's almost 5:20. But
shoot,
yeah, but no, keep talking.
All right, let's wrap this up then, real quick. But your thoughts on that, because I think that there's this opportunity here to really explode out and do some really crazy indie stuff that can't be done. And you look at like Hollywood, and people are just dissatisfied, right? Like whatever your take is on movies, it's like generally people are just like, oh, they're not as interesting as they could be. But to me, that's always been the indie space. And so I don't know, do you kind of get this sense too, as you see stuff doing well, you're like, I was really surprised how well it did Alter. You know, do you think that's something that's happening, or is it like, hey, you're in your own bubble, trust me, feature films are where it's always going to be?
No, I hope that there is becoming more of an audience for sort of like independent short stuff. Is that what you're asking? Like,
right. I kind of see this as like, I think, so there is like this age in comic books, right? If you follow comics at all, where it's like, it was the golden era of comics, and it's just like the big two, right? Or big three or whatever, you know, it's just DC, Marvel, they're just making everything. And then in the late 80s, early 90s, there became this whole underground comic book movement, and there was zines, and there was like just all this crazy stuff happening. There's eventually like a Supreme Court case, right, about these crazy comics that were coming out because
Whoa.
they were, they did everything that the big two couldn't. It was like violent and sexual or whatever, horror, like stuff that you just couldn't, Marvel just was never going to do and DC was never going to do. And you had these independent comics. That's where like Image Comics eventually comes out in the late 80s, early 90s. Is this whole world of indie comics that because producing became cheap, because printing became cheap, because people could draw, all these things became accessible. And I could sort of, in my head, I'm like, that's what's happening in this indie space. Like
I think
directory, animation, all these things are happening. We should see this underground surge. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not like, I don't think it's, to me, I'm not like noticing a big surge yet, but like, I think there's a lot of tools available now to everybody. Like you were saying, like, even just like learning how to animate or filmmake, like from a very young age, because everyone's got, stuff on YouTube and tutorials and things like that I don't think that we necessarily had. And so like I'm noticing like when sometimes I like guest speak at animation classes and stuff. And I'm really impressed by like what the level of stuff that the kids are producing, like their films are working on. I think that everybody sort of has like a skill set now that's like totally sufficient to like create whatever they want. Like there's nowhere limits. But I think like there's nowhere limits in terms of technology to create this stuff, but I think the limits are time and like labor and things like that. And so I think like that's where it's challenging for, at least in the animation space, to kind of create indie stuff. It always takes like a team of people to make things, unless you do it my way or your way, or it's just like skeleton crew for years. But if there's, I don't know. I think like there could be more out there. I was a little disappointed in like the amount of genre animation stuff I was seeing in the festivals, or really not much. And like in one sense, like it made Buzzkill stand out because there wasn't very much like 2D animated horror stuff. On the other hand, I was like, I don't know, like I was hoping to find more of that. And there is like a bunch of bizarre animation and things like that are out there. But maybe, I don't know. I think there's a line, like you're saying, it's like you need a certain level of polish, I think, even for like festivals and for general audience of YouTube, things like that. Like people, there's some like really scratchy, crazy, like underground animation stuff that's like super violent and like, and nuts, but like I don't think it's necessarily palatable or gets programmed in these sort of things. And so it's stuff that has a certain level of polish that has the opportunity to reach more eyeballs, even if it's like different than Hollywood, Pixar or whatever that sort of stuff is. But
so last question, I'll let you get out of here. Do you get the sense with those kids you're talking to and the animation students, maybe not kids, but
they're kids.
Yeah. Are they, does it seem to you like their goal is to get into a studio, or is it obviously depends, right? There's going to be a span, but there's a general sense, or was most of them kind of just like, oh, I can just skip all that. I can just go, I just want to get animation out there. I'm just going to build a team. We're just going to put stuff, I can make a channel. I can make a whatever.
Yeah. I don't know for sure. That's a good question that, I haven't directly asked any of these kids, just because they're so in the trenches just trying to like create a film. But I think that they definitely have like everything they need to do what you're talking about now. Like if they wanted to just get a bunch of friends together and create like a small studio, I think there's like way more opportunities for that now, especially like after COVID where everything's remote. Like I've been working remote for the last like 3 years, and I used to be in a studio every day all the time. And now it's like, it's coast to coast. Like I work on jobs for people all over the country, and the teams are made up of people all over the country. And there's like way more accessibility to collaborating with people and sort of making things in a way, even making like these shorts that we're talking about. Like you have an artist, former Russian,
right.
I was like my crew was kind of spread out all over, and everything's being made remote, and we're kind of, Google driving everything together. I think that like that's something that is beneficial now, I think, for filmmakers, and undergrad stuff definitely has more of a fighting chance now, I think, than it did. But again, I I'm sort of, I haven't seen as much of it as I would have hoped. And also maybe I'm just not looking in the right places.
Yeah, I think we're also really bad at, like, frankly, just like asking for money, asking for things, right? Because I'm looking and I'm noticing there's some new, like, there's a new subwave of comics, and there's a new wave of, like, kind of people coming out with indie comics and doing decent and alternative stuff and going direct to consumer. That stuff seems to go well, and I can't figure out why it hasn't happened yet for video. And I don't know if it's like, well, audiences just don't want to pay for it. They like the free video is sort of how we've, like, in people's heads, that's how it is.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, surely you could get sponsored. Surely you could get, like, so. It's just something I've been thinking about a lot, and I would like to see happen, because I have no desire to work in Hollywood or for a big production house, but I do want to make, more and more regularly, and I would like to not go broke doing it, right? As you know.
Right, yeah. Yes, everything comes out of your pocket when you're, right.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, what does that path look like? Does it, maybe it's opening up more of what I was showing you at the beginning, like I should show more stuff and talk about it more and get people interested. But it's an interesting thought, and it just goes full circle to the beginning, where it's like, we're really bad at marketing. We don't want to market. It's just like, the work should just be the work. But maybe I need to adjust that. So
yeah, I think that's like the new thing that everyone is. I think it's like a new tool, as I was saying, and it's like we have to learn how to just, I guess, navigate it, even though it's not necessarily like pinging the same things in our head that are exciting, but it's like I think it's necessary at this point if you want to try to attract funding or whatever.
All right, I'll let you go, man. Thank you so much for talking, and I hope we can do it again.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a sister in New York, so if I'm ever in New York, I'll hit you up, and if you're ever in Phoenix, let me know. I'd love to talk.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. If you are ever in New York, like, drop me a line. We'll grab a beer. Like, it'll be fun. We'll talk about horror.